What is up, everybody? Welcome to Steve the Missionary Live Bathrobe Chat, where we talk about what happened in the last week in the videos and in the real world. I am Steve the Missionary, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Welcome to everybody that's showing up right now, and welcome to everybody who's going to watch later. If you're here right now, the chat is open. I would love to hear your comments on everything. Today, we're going to talk about last week's videos, and we're going to talk a lot about the Super Bowl. So if you have any comments, especially on those two things, that's going to be a lot of fun to chat about. So the first comment today is, that's my dad in the background you just saw. Today we had a ton of rain, and it's actually colder than normal. So hence the hoodie under the bathrobe. In the summer, maybe the costume will be better, but right now it's hoodie and bathrobe time. I'm actually going to shift this a little bit. So that who's here? Sean and Susan are here. Super excited. So yeah, in the summer, maybe the costume will be a little bit different, but right now, we're already talking about Sweet Victory in the comments. I'm going to be dressed like this. Okay, I'm going to tell the whole story about my approach to the Super Bowl. Then we'll get to the halftime show, and then we'll get to Sweet Victory. This is the method we have to get through, nice and slow. All right, is everyone okay with that? All right. So first of all, I don't like American football that much. I wasn't exactly raised on it. I never really played it growing up. I played soccer growing up and a little bit of basketball, but I'm not good. My brother's good, but I am not. And even today, when I watch a football game, did you know that an average NFL game lasts for 4 hours, but the average amount of time that the ball is actually in play is like 11 minutes? I cannot handle that. I just cannot do that. So I don't watch a lot of football. I do get excited about like the playoffs, and like I know who's in the playoffs. Last year Philadelphia won, and I was extremely excited about that because that's like my adopted home. And this year Los Angeles was in the Super Bowl, which is crazy because I have a lot of opinions about that. Mostly, we don't want any football teams. Like, we're fine with the sports we have. We're more worried about the Lakers and who they're going to draft than things like if we're winning the Super Bowl. That's just kind of the way it is. So that's kind of the way it is. So I usually show up to Super Bowl halftime or Super Bowl games to a friend's house around halftime because I like hanging out with my friends, and I know enough about football to have opinions and enjoy myself, but that's way too long. So I show up at halftime. But I love halftime shows. My dad is screwing into the wall right when I started doing this. Great. I love Super Bowl halftime shows. I have opinions about Super Bowl halftime shows. I watch them after the fact. I love watching them. I love Super Bowl halftime shows and Olympic opening events. I think that they are a fascinating piece of mass culture. Like, halftime shows, you an artist, a pop artist, has 12 and a half minutes to show what they have with the largest possible audience. And some of them really rise to the occasion, and it's really incredible to see. Like the Olympics, a country, an entire nation has, an hour-ish before, if you take out like the marching of the athletes, they have like an hour-ish to show the world who they are and what they're proud of as a nation. And I think those are fascinating concepts. And when you shove a ton of money in it, and like all of the various interests that having a ton of money adds to it, you have made something really, really cool. So I have a lot of opinions. I care a lot. I study basically a lot of my Super Bowl halftime shows. My top Super Bowl halftime shows, top 3. Number 1, Prince, single greatest halftime show of all time. I wasn't even a Prince fan when I saw it, and it turned me into one. It's absolutely stunning. It is a literal work of art, that halftime show. 2 and 3, in no particular order, Beyonce and Lady Gaga. They both absolutely killed it in 2 different ways, and I completely love what they did. There are very few people, especially like solo artists, who have done. I think they're the only 2 solo artists with Michael Jackson who did it without any other like special guest artist, especially in recent times, and that's fascinating to me. And then a special honorable mention to Katy Perry, because I didn't like Katy Perry before she did her show, and then she did it, and I just had so much fun. It was so good. And that's what I watched last night, was a documentary after the game, because the game ends at like 6 over here. After the game, I watched, there was a documentary on the making of Katy Perry's halftime show. I learned a lot. It was tons of fun. So when they say Maroon 5 is going to do the show, I'm like, okay, Maroon 5 can do a passable concert, and we will be like, huh, that was okay. I guess we'll watch the rest of the game. With a possibility of a massive victory for the internet as a whole if they actually play Sweet Victory. So there was this combination of two things. It can either be passable or it can be awesome. And those were like the two options going in. On top of that, I actually did show up to my friend's house at halftime. And apparently the game was only 3-0. And that blew my mind, that a Super Bowl game could be so low scoring. I talked later that I understand now why football fans look at soccer games with scores of 1-0, 2-1, 0-0, and they cannot fathom watching that game and being interested, because a low scoring football game is one of the worst things in the world. It's horrendous and boring, and I can't stand it. And so if that's your idea of a low scoring game, you look at a soccer game score, you wouldn't want to watch the whole thing. But it's different. Trust me, football fans, it's different. Soccer's better. I just want to put that out there. Soccer is a better sport. So the game is already sucking, and we know that. Maroon 5 gets on stage, and what's his face? Adam Levine looks bored. He looks bored out of his mind. He's hitting notes flat. They're not, the band is kind of doing interesting things, but the camera's not paying attention to them at all. And they're not being interesting enough to kind of merit more stuff. And it honestly looked like a cheaper halftime show. Like, it genuinely looked like they spent less money on this show. I think it was the Atlantic said this was a show that looked like it was designed to be forgotten. Like, the NFL went up through a bunch of politics this year and a bunch of racial politics in the last 2 years, and they just wanted to survive the halftime show without causing another mess. So if you could forget about the halftime show, all the better. But then Maroon 5 shows up and sucks. They were awful. They were a terrible show. Never rewatch this show. It's really, really bad. And then on top of that, they kept playing a bunch of songs that featured another artist, and then they didn't bring that artist out. So there was this massive feeling that something was missing constantly through the show. They played Sicko Mode without Drake. They played Moves Like Jagger without Christina Aguilera. They played Girls Like You without Cardi B. And then Big Boy shows up and plays I Like the Way You Move, which is off of an Outkast album, without Andre and without Farnsworth, which would have been an awesome thing to have on Farnsworth dancing around on stage with an umbrella. There were more people missing from that stage than were standing on the stage, and there weren't even dancers for the stuff that would have been good with dancers. I really don't understand how they could so miss the mark on what would look good on TV and look good on stage. It's almost like each other. It genuinely looked like this was the first time that Travis Scott and Maroon 5 had been standing on stage at the same time. It genuinely looked like this was the first time that Big Boy and Maroon 5 were standing on the stage at the same time. And that's not a good look for the Super Bowl halftime show. And then I have now gotten to Sweet Victory. Sweet Victory, for those of you who don't know, we're going to start at the beginning. Steven Hillenburg, who was the creator of SpongeBob SquarePants, died in November of last year. And for, I think, a whole generation of people, including myself, SpongeBob is a cultural cornerstone. It's this piece of comedy that's one, just full of pure joy and unadulterated, unpolitical, joyful, happy fun. And we were so sad when Steven Hillenburg died. And there's a famous episode, season 2, episode 15 of SpongeBob SquarePants, which features the short called Band Geeks. And in it, they all the characters of SpongeBob learn how to play in a band, and they play the Bubble Bowl, I think it's called, which is like a fake Super Bowl. And they sing this fake 80s song called Sweet Victory. And it's beautiful and victorious and hilarious and fun. And please go watch season 2, episode 15. It is so much fun. When, and so it's always wanted to be the kind of, what do I say? It's always wanted to be performed at a big stadium, because especially for people like my age who want to sing along to it, because it's sweet, sweet victory. It's easy. I've got a lot of comments right now like, oh, I love best episode ever, Susan. Sean just likes SpongeBob in general, and Rebecca gave you nightmares because Rebecca, were you actually in band at the time? Is that why? Is that why you couldn't do it, or was it a different episode that gave you the nightmares? So anyway, young people, especially young people online, wanted to see Sweet Victory. It would have been just fine if Maroon 5 had just covered it, or like I'm not going to say part of it. It's a 1 minute long song, and so we're hoping that this happens. We know it's a long shot. Like, we do know it's a long shot, but we're also kind of hopeful if it's going to happen any year, it's going to be the year after Steven Hillenburg died, in tribute. And if it's going to happen with any pop star, it's going to happen with Maroon 5, a rock band who has kind of the voice, and it's not going to cut into kind of their brand all that much. So this is so we were kind of hopeful, and there were kind of two options on the table. There was either going to be like this mediocre Maroon 5 show, and then it was going to end, and we were going to like golf clap and say that was a Maroon 5 show, and we would get on with our lives. Or there would be a mediocre Maroon 5 show capped with a rousing production of Sweet Victory, and we would all be extremely happy that it happened, and it didn't matter how bad the rest of the football game was, because we got to see Sweet Victory happen, and we could go home happy. Instead, they picked this third way, which I don't know why they did it. They gave us the intro to Sweet Victory, and then attempted their best way to remix it into Sicko Mode by Travis Scott and Drake. And then suddenly Travis Scott is on stage, and like Maroon 5 is trying to dance with them, and no. It was, and so it wasn't a call out or a tribute so much as it was an insult. And the hilarious thing is, I don't think the NFL knew it was going to be taken that way. I genuinely think they thought they had given a proper hat tip to the people that wanted this, a proper tribute to the song and the persons who were involved in its creation. And when what they were really doing was massively insulting everyone who tried. Like, either do it or don't. Like I said, we would have been sad, but understood if it was just a mediocre Maroon 5 show. And we would have loved if it was a mediocre Maroon 5 show capped with freaking Sweet Victory. But to do Maroon 5, tease Sweet Victory so we all turn up the volume and get excited, and then hit a rap song that does not blend into the rest of the show and is missing one of the rappers because he's not on stage, is just so mind-boggling and stupid. So then, especially if you're from LA, you were sad because the show sucked. And then on top of that, you were sad because the game was boring. And then you were sad because we lost. So I'm not happy with the Super Bowl. I'm not a fan of what happened. And let's be real, everyone, like the fact that Maroon 5 is still in existence, and the fact that Maroon 5 like is important still, that's our fault. That's really our own fault. Maroon 5, and it's so sad because their first album was such a dang classic. I still spin Songs About Jane. I still listen to it. It's so, so good. But it's it got stale really fast, and then we allowed it to stay popular. And that really is an indictment on us as Americans and us as a nation and a culture. We should stop that. We shouldn't allow things like the Maroon 5 halftime show to happen. They shouldn't have been popular to be there. Even if they were the 10th or 12th pick, they shouldn't have been the 10th or 12th pick. We need to do better than Maroon 5, America. And we need to do better than teasing an entire generation that we're going to let you have your cultural moment and then just drop it like that. That's awful. The the sweet victory tease was generational warfare. This is possibly going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back in the boomers versus millennials war. We finally don't care about you and will attack you. It wasn't the election, it wasn't the environment. It was freaking sweet victory. Um, that's my opinion on the whole thing. On top of that, I think the NFL needs to die. The NFL is the one that gave us this. The NFL is a lot of good things. I'll readily admit that having a football team in a city is a great, great thing. But it needs when it produces this and then expects us to like it and tries to get us to come back because of that, like, no, you need to go away, especially if you're going to take tax money to build your stadiums, and if you're going to be basically written into the law of our country, and if you're going to have the freaking Super Bowl be a tax exempt event, because you're technically a nonprofit. No, I don't like it one bit when nonprofits can make people that rich, and take away that much from communities and cities, even though they have the ability to give so much to cities. I don't like that one bit. So if you're gonna cause that much, okay, I have to stop because Sean just said he's never listened to Maroon 5, and so did Rebecca say she never actually liked Maroon 5. Go listen to their first album. Just go, like, stop right now, go find it on Spotify or buy the CD somewhere. Listen to Songs About Jane by Maroon 5 all the way through. It's glorious. It's 2003 glory, and it will never die because there's some great songs on that album. Okay, going back to what was I saying? Yeah, the NFL needs to die. It makes good things in the cities, but it doesn't override the bad things. And if I have to stomach all the bad things that the NFL does, it better at least give me good games and a good halftime show. That's all I'm saying. That's that that's all I have to say. So back to this past week's videos. A little bit of reaction to them. I love the "How's Your Prayer Life" videos that I put up, and I love the reaction I get from you guys, the fans and the viewers, because we need a flashy nickname for the fans and the viewers. The That Catholic couple had Donut Squad. There's Nerd Fighteria. I hope something comes up for people who watch Steve the Missionary. But where was I like my How's Your Prayer Life videos. One is because I get to talk to people like Matt Baker, who's an two. I realized while I was editing this video how much trust is given me and how honored I really am to be to be given this sort of window into people's lives. How much of an honor it is, and how intimate a prayer life is. So, which means that I need to get more honest when I talk about my own prayer life, and then when people comment, really consistently, how's your prayer life is always a dip in the viewership, but it's always a spike in the comments, which means that less people watch the videos, but more people love the videos. And it becomes a very cool conversation about what prayer is, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of our prayers, in the comments, and people come from wildly different situations where they're praying really well, they're forgetting about something, they're reminding everyone else. I just learned this, that I need to remember um, X, Y, or Z in my own prayer life, and I want to remind everyone else in the comments that that's important. And I love that. I love that so much, that people are taking wisdom that God is giving them through prayer, and it's pouring out of them onto other people. That is so important and so beautiful and so good. A couple things I want to remind people in who watch How's Your Prayer Life um, is that presumption and scruples or despair, which that's not interchangeable, are both bad. Don't get too worked up about things that are either not sins or are venial sins. Venial sins are very bad, but like don't skip communion because of them. I have a whole video about how it's okay to skip communion, but don't think that your prayer life, that your spiritual life has been destroyed because of how you feel, because of the actions of people around you, or because of your own non-sinful actions, your own venial sinful actions, and your own mortally sinful actions. If you commit a mortal sin, that doesn't mean you can't pray anymore. If you commit a mortal sin, that means you can't grow anymore. If you commit a mortal sin, that doesn't mean God doesn't speak to you anymore. We make that mistake. So please remember that when you're praying. Please remember that when you're sharing your prayer. Some things to avoid when it comes to scruples, when it comes to despair, and when it comes to presumption. So videos coming this week. I'm gonna have a rundown of some books that I've recently stolen from work. That's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm gonna talk about the Knights of Columbus. It is time. It is time to talk about the Knights of Columbus. That's what's and I'm still working on good sign-offs for this channel. A friend of mine recommended "The Vlog Has Ended. Go in Peace," which I like. So that might be the end of that might be the end of my videos from now on. But if you have something better, go ahead and comment. So there's also Thanks Be to Vlog, but I don't think that's gonna work. So how are you guys doing? What are you guys commenting? What do you guys think about anything we just did? If not, I will say the vlog is ended. Go in peace.